There, you're listening to the Great Box Podcast.
All right, Gray Box Sessions, here we go. Today, we're going to talk about a lot of things, but I wanted to address some things that are in the news, of course, and this kind of video portion of what I'm going to start doing. So I'm going to start doing a video of the Gray Box Sessions that'll be up on YouTube, Instagram, IGTV, things like that. I'm already kind of doing it, so might as well add a visual element to it. Not that really anybody wants to see my face, but why not? Today I listened to Representative Ocasio-Cortez. She is a U.S. House representative in, the New York's 14th district. She is an Instagram star and also a congresswoman. So, and the reason I say that is because she's super popular. She's got millions of followers, 8-9 million, something like that on Instagram. She really seemed to come out of nowhere. She was a bartender, then worked on Bernie Sanders' campaign as like an organizer. She was the youngest youngest to be elected in the House. I think she was like 29. So, I mean, she's a star. There's no question she's a star. And I think what's interesting as I go through this podcast on a daily basis, I'm kind of looking at things, what to talk about, and things that are interesting to talk about, things that can bridge the gap of those that may not even care about politics. Because I can't do politics all the time because it's just, I mean, nobody wants to do politics all the time. Back when President Trump was in office, all it was Trump. Back when President Obama was in office, it was Obama. Now it's going to be Biden. And kind of all the things that are associated with the news of the day. And in terms of politics, the news of the day is always going to be skewed a certain way. So what I try to do is look at the left, middle, the left, center, and then right when I'm looking at news, because none of it is I don't think any of it is based it's based more in ratings and to talk to a specific audience than it is to just provide truth. Journalism is kind of gone, really. And that's unfortunate. My kids the other day were asking, my youngest boy asked what I want to be when I grow up. And it's funny because I thought what I would have liked to have done was be a journalist. I think that would have been fun to do. And so maybe this podcast is a way to explore a little bit of those tendencies and to look into certain things. But have a really cool lineup of podcasts coming up in terms of interviews that I'm really excited about, that don't focus on politics and that are just humanity driven. And if you haven't listened to the past couple podcasts, I had Dr. Chris, friend of mine, on. Go back and listen to it. Really good podcast. You can find it on any podcast, Spotify, iTunes, any of those things. Here on Instagram, if you're watching on Instagram or YouTube or anything like that, you can find the links in any of the bios on those platforms. So And then also the grayboxpodcast.com is now up and running and being fine-tuned and things like that. But if you want to listen to some good podcasts, go back and listen to some of the interviews. The last interview I did was with Dr. Chris, like I said, just super good guy, a guy that I admire greatly. And we talked about kind of social things and a little bit of politics, not very much, more kind of different generations, how he grew up differently a little bit than I did, and how that is playing out. And we talked about COVID, and he's a physician. And so he has some expertise in just medicine and what's going on. And I really think a lot of his perspectives were really good for me to hear. I think it's worthwhile to listen to, and just see where the medical community is coming from in terms of like why to get vaccinated, the goal in vaccination, things like that. We can disagree with a lot of things when it comes to COVID. And I do have a lot of disagreements. I did a podcast. One of my first podcasts was about COVID and the CDC and things like that. And to date, it's the highest listened to podcast. And it's because it's always on our mind. The top 3 Google searches for 2020 were related to COVID. So it's a big thing. It's one of those things that I'm trying to stay away a little bit from, because it's, it's just getting tiresome going over and reviewing it over and over and over again. And the politicization of it is getting just out of control. And I just have stepped away a little bit from it. I have some strong opinions about it. There's things that you can mean the heck out of the COVID stuff, the hypocrisy. There's so much of it going on. It's crazy how much hypocrisy is going on. All of a sudden now everything's good to open up. Schools are good to open, all those things. If you're honest with yourself, take this ride with me. Let's just be honest about a lot of the policies that are going on. If you hated Trump, that's fine. If you hate Biden, that's fine. It doesn't get anywhere. It doesn't do anything. If you hate certain politicians, it doesn't do anything for you. It doesn't help you to progress in any way. So have your own opinion, have your own values, have your own sense of worth when it comes to reading stories and reading about politics and reading about social issues. We're in Black History Month right now, and I see a lot on maybe the right side kind of talking about, well, why do we have to have a whole month dedicated to Black history? It used to be a day and then a week and then a month and then I don't understand why. I don't know why. But there is a community and a segment of the population that was persecuted heavily. And so we do this thing called Black History Month. In our family, during this month, we've been learning about it. There's nothing wrong with that. It doesn't mean that I claim to understand it. Doesn't mean I claim to be a bastion of like civil rights. I'm not. But it's something to look at. It's something to talk about. It's something to acknowledge. And there are race baiters out there. This is my opinion here right now, is that the racists out there are primarily politicians. They are the racists. And I think most of us can agree with that, because someone that looks at a skin color or skin tone or ethnicity and uses that as a weapon to form ideology and to form policy and to form things is in itself racist. It's taking race as a way to utilize an opinion, utilize and subject people to certain things. That is racism, in my opinion. And so I see that mostly coming from politicians. It seems to come from one side more than the other, but both sides do it. And that leads me to AOC, and she did this thing, which I think is good. And see, here's the thing that many would disagree with. One of the things that people may disagree with is following people that you don't necessarily agree with. I think it's important to follow people that you do disagree with and see what they're saying and see if there's any commonality there. In terms of AOC, she says a lot of things that you can agree with. I just think that the way and the route is super hypocritical, and that can be outlined in various ways. I mean, she has a sweatshirt that says tax the rich that costs like $70. Okay. Tax the rich. And there's a sweatshirt that you can buy. It says tax the rich. It's $70. And there's been plenty of people that have looked at it that are in the textile industry that have said this thing can't cost more than $5 to make. So, I mean, just think about that a little bit. That's what's going on. It's just reality. There's just enormous amounts of hypocrisy going on. So in her beginning statement, she talks about what happened at the Capitol. And I would encourage you to listen to her IG. So she went live, but then she posted it. So I'd encourage you to listen to it. Many of my friends on the right would say, why the heck do you want people to listen to that? Or because I think it's useful. I think you should listen to, both sides. So I've had on Sarmo and a couple other individuals that went to the Capitol for the protests, and we got their side of the story. And it's quite a bit different than her side of the story, but let's have some of that laid out. The one thing that I'm just going to bring up here is racism, because it is Black History Month. And because that is the race that was enslaved. And there's been other races and cultures and people that have been enslaved. I'm from a religion that was persecuted heavily. So, I mean, it happens. Doesn't make any of it right. But what's interesting is she starts this out with labeling all of the people that went into the Capitol as racists, white supremacist, insurrectionists. And that's where you start to diverge. That's where you say, a little bit of honesty would be so helpful in kind of this very divisive time. And I know that she's out there to kind of divide, and she has her, kind of her leanings and things like that. But you can't start it out that way, because there is no proof that this group of people, there's this narrative out there that anybody that supported Donald Trump is a white supremacist insurrectionist. That is factually untrue. Okay. Similarly to some of the things reported about the election being stolen were untrue. I'm not going to dive into all that, but we have to be intellectually honest about things like that and understand that people that went to protest at the Capitol on the 6th, they were not white supremacists. Now, there could be some. I mean, I don't even know where you can be associated with a white supremacist group or where I could find a gathering or anything like that. I have no idea. And I'm a white male, so I should be able to find that very easily, I would think, right? I have no idea how to be associated with white supremacy or KKK or Nazis or anything like that. I have no idea. But apparently it's rampant on the earth and in America today, which is odd because I don't see it, but I am a white male. So I understand that it's not in my face as much. So my advice to the other side is be a little bit more like AOC and go on and talk about what happened and the point of views, but let's not do it in a way that's super divisive like she did. Now she did address the fact that it sounds that she was, not sounds like she divulged that she was abused, which is super terrible and is, of course, just, she says she's a survivor of sexual assault, which is terrible. And I know people personally in my life that have been affected by that, and it's an awful thing. And so I'll just leave that at that. That's an interesting thing that she divulged just on this and relating it to the Capitol storm on the Capitol. She talked about that she thought she was going to die. I can't say that she didn't think that. She very well may have thought that she was going to die. And that is what happened to her. That is her story. And she talks about that being her story. So, it's her story, and that's important to hear all sides of the story. What I also found interesting is that she said that people are trying to bury it and to forget about it and to just get over it, act like it never happened, which it couldn't be further from the truth. There are many people out there that are advocating tremendous investigation on what happened. In fact, I don't know anybody, and I watch a lot of news, I don't know anybody that is in media forum or political forum that is not appalled by what happened and didn't condemn what happened. And that is the interesting part of all this. Nobody is trying to, and so she's speaking to the right. She specifically talks about Ted Cruz, and she's talking about Ted Cruz tried to have her killed and all these things. It's like, this is why it's important to read and look at information and come to a reasonable diagnosis in our minds, a reasonable, honest approach to things. Because the gaslighting that happens in the media and with politicians is just absolutely outrageous. It's out of control. And I think we saw with the stock market, and we're seeing with the stock market being manipulated by this Reddit group, showing that there are groups of people that essentially can get together and change things. And so much of the kind of the left side has done such a better job, I think, on outlining a platform. And it's usually a platform of emotion. And we tend to gravitate towards that emotion more freely. And emotion is far better to attach to. Not better, but easier to attach to. In terms of the COVID stuff, the emotional side of it is really easy to attach to. Politically, think about it. I mean, politics is very much emotional. It's everybody. If you don't choose this side, then the republic is over. The democracy dies. If you don't choose this side, then socialism will ensue. Communism will ensue. The thing that drives me nuts. Both sides does this. Is everything isn't Hitler. Every person isn't Hitler that disagrees with you. Podcast I did with Dr. Chris, we talk about this, about completely demonizing everybody for not believing what you believe. We can't do that anymore. We're to a place where we have to stop demonizing people for their ideas and for their beliefs. I know it feels better to destroy somebody That's all the media does now, is destroy everybody. And I know it feels good, but it's not productive at all. And so there's a lot of power within groups of people. And back to, AOC talking about all of this stuff, to just blanket, this is the problem, blanketing everybody that supports somebody, just like anybody that supports AOC is a communist or a socialist revolutionary. It's not true. There are instances where I think we can agree on some of the things that, no matter what side you sit on, whatever they purport, you can get behind. Now, the road to it may be different. For instance, take the tax the rich thing. Crony capitalism is bad. I don't like it. Most people don't like it unless you're the elite. This hedge fund deal with GameStop and AMC and now Silver and some of the other things, that is the elite manipulating things and allowing us to kind of fend for ourselves, and in some cases just cutting us out. So there's an elite class, and the elite class sits in with politicians. They are the elite class. They are the people that essentially form our opinions, make us believe certain things. The appealing thing about AOC is that she tends to use that kind of grassroots situation, that grassroots type of formula, which she learned from Bernie Sanders. And that is something that take a lesson there and see how useful it is for her views and for her side of the aisle. It's very useful and it works. She gets a tremendous amount of viewership on her videos. And that is, again, let's be honest, because her stuff is allowed to be told by social media. This is not conspiratorial. I have been now in contact with many people that have been doxxed or demonetized or throttled down for saying the same things that AOC is saying. The exact same things, but from a different perspective. From a perspective that tends to be more on the other side. And their stuff is demonetized and throttled back. So this is a real thing. I don't care. Listen, I don't care what side of the aisle you sit on in terms of politics. We are manipulated. And so we need to get to a better place on reading news, consuming news. Part of the Gray Box podcast is to look at this stuff and then step away, not being shelled, not being put into this box or this category, not being told you're a white supremacist for believing this, not being told you're an insurrectionist because you went to a rally in support of the opposing side, not being told that you are a socialist because you think healthcare is a right, not being told that you're against the Second Amendment because you think that there should be a reasonable look at some of our gun laws as they're constituted today. Not being told that you're a communist because you believe that in some of the things that Bernie Sanders talks about. Not being put into that box that says you're a revolutionary because you believed in making America great again. We need to remove some of that stuff. The UFC is super popular, and I like it. I watch it. And it's interesting. When I say I like it, I find myself in kind of this weird place of like, we're just watching people bash themselves silly. And there's an art and there's skill and there's all these things being used. So don't misconstrue that. But the UFC is very popular because, well, one of the reasons is because you're watching skill and you're watching some really unique things in terms of allowing people to fight essentially without their hands tied behind their back. They can actually fight each other. But it coincides and correlates with politics so well because that's what we like to see. We love to see people bashing each other. We love to see people destroying the other side. Social media now is just who destroyed who the best. And so the challenge would be watch AOC's video, go to the Gray Box podcast and listen to two podcasts. Listen to Sarmo's podcast where he talks about what it was like for him to be there at this thing from the outside. He didn't, go in. And Joanna and some other people that we had and have had on the podcast that talk about what's going on. Try to listen to both sides. I did a podcast about absolutes. Absolutes are really hard for me to deal with because it doesn't allow me to form an opinion. And I think most people want to be allowed to form an opinion. There is a side that I'm understanding and noticing that they want that opinion formed for them. And they want to feel good about themselves. And that's troubling. So this is just me, an average person, just talking about not being put in a box and looking at all sides of the story and understanding that I tend to lean certain ways, of course, Christian, white, male, whatever you want to kind of put me into, but understanding that I also think differently. I think most people do as well, but they're afraid to kind of let that come out. And we get so trapped into the just pounding of the same drum. Do you really think that these people care about you? Like, do you really think that these politicians care about you? Do you think that these media organizations care about you? Do you think that social media platforms in general care about you? They don't give a rip. They don't care. So that's why, in my opinion, it's important to have a higher power, somebody above, something above yourself. I don't care what it is, what religion it is, or what practice it is, or if it's a universe. Having something above yourself is important. Family, good relationships, good friendships, good people around you. Those seem to be the things that are most fulfilling. Removing ourselves from this crap. From the starting of a video saying that this was a racist insurrection. Can you honestly believe that that's what this is? Maybe. And I'll walk down the road with you if you can show it to me. I will go down the road. Show me where it is. Are there racists? Yes. But a movement of people that believe in the ideologies of the former president, they are not racist. Sorry to tell you. And most of the people that believe in AOC and Bernie Sanders and some of these people that seem to be very fringy and far left, they're not communist revolutionaries or socialists. Now, maybe some of the policies are that way, and maybe we could go down that road to be that way on both sides. But that's not what's in our hearts. Maybe it's naive. I know people watch this and say that's super naive. But I talk to people, and that's not where they're sitting. I talk to people on both sides. It's not really where they are when you get down to it. That's easy to meme and to forward a post or to throw it along and to just shove it out there. And then instantly that's who you are and what you believe. That's not what's in the heart of these people in general. In general. So think about what you're consuming and come on to the Gray Box podcast, because we're going to look at all sides and we're going to have other people and ideologies on here. We're going to talk about it. We're going to talk about religion and faith and politics and money and all the things that you're not supposed to talk about. We're going to do that because I'm tired of this stuff that I'm being fed. And I think most people are. And I think we need to have a commonality of beliefs that it's okay. You know, the censorship that's happening is bad. And I think that's going to spill over and change, and things are going to happen to hopefully rectify some of that stuff. I don't care who you are, on what side you sit. It's bad. It's not good. There's just, some leaked video of, there was the Twitter and the CNN and the, Project Veritas does a bunch of this stuff. I'm kind of on the fence on how it's done with Project Veritas, but it's out there. So so you look at it and you read it and you see some of the leaked videos. They just got Zuckerberg and some of their, high level people talking about how, really how manipulating and how manipulative they can be in terms of their platform. And it's important to understand that they're a platform and not a publisher, but yet they're acting like a publisher now. That's what this 230 thing's all about. And we'll, podcast about that at some point, but it's important to have a voice. So have a voice. grayboxpodcast.com or thegrayboxpodcast.com. Social media is at Darren Johnson. Well, it's actually at the real Darren Johnson on Facebook and on Instagram. Go there, subscribe to the podcast. A lot of really cool things coming up, continually coming up. We've had a lot more downloads than I ever imagined and views and things like that are happening that is cool for somebody that's kind of, shooting off the hip in terms of when I have time to do this. It makes for long nights and early mornings and time away from family, but trying to weasel and fit that into spots where I'm not, taken away from my family time and things like that, because I like to be interactive with people. I like to talk to people. And I think that most people feel that way and are cool with being open and talking. But people are scared. People are scared to talk. People are scared to tell their story. And when I started on this endeavor, I wanted to be able to show my kids that I wasn't scared. Let me back up. That I was scared, but that I'm willing to do it. And that's an interesting thing to throw out there. So don't be scared to have a real authentic opinion rather than a meme or follow somebody's ideology, hook, line, and sinker, whatever they say is truth, whatever they say is gospel. create your own memes, create your own stuff. And if you do meme or send something out or you're forwarding a post, give some context to why you like it. Because more people need to have their voices heard rather than just kind of the standard people. And so hopefully that's what this podcast brings. So go subscribe to the Gray Box Podcast, YouTube, and all of the platforms that host podcasts. Gray Box Sessions out.
Thanks for listening to the Gray Box Podcast.